All right, we are live on UNLV Biomechanics Facebook, and we are recording. I'm John Mercer, faculty at University of Nevada, Las Vegas, and part of the Sports Research and Innovation Initiative. And this podcast is to get researchers to know researchers working in the area of sports. And the Sports Research and Innovation Initiative has really catching some great momentum. And the mission of this initiative is to optimize health, maximize performance, and promote innovation and economic development through sport. And I'm really excited to have this conversation because we're going to really talk about some neat innovation and very applied. And I know I'm actually excited about sharing this presentation to our Las Vegas Tri Club because they're going to be really interested in the topic here. But we've got some people to introduce first. I'm going to start with Jay Vickers. Hey, Jay, how's it going?
I'm doing good. Always happy to be here and to talk about sports research innovation, and with two of my favorite researchers who have all been very supportive in what we're trying to accomplish, and also have led the way, in my opinion, from engineering and collaboration. They've done a great job and not just collaborated within themselves, but also across campus. So really excited to hear about what they're doing here and also what they're doing externally in the community.
That's great. And Jay is our business development director of the Sports Research and Innovation Initiative and been really critical to really launching this and getting some really good momentum behind the idea. So this is pretty exciting. So thanks, Jay. Thanks for joining us. All right. And now we've got our guests. This is so much fun because actually we have two guests on this one. And this is a good example of an academic industry partnership that's formed, and it's fun to have an industry partner on the call as well. Noah Malgeri from Mojave Rail. Did I say that right? Mojave Light Rail. And great to have you on. And this is really neat to have you on here along with our academic partner, Brendan O'Toole from engineering. Hey, Brendan, how's it going?
Good. Everything's going well.
Excellent. Well, you two have formed a neat partnership, and maybe we just start with maybe how did that partnership form? Where did the first call happen?
From my side, it was over a year ago now, I guess, when Zach Miles had contacted me and said he described the Catalyst program and said he thought there was a good potential for a partnership with Mojave Rail, that they had some interesting patented technology and wanted to develop a prototype and collaborate with the university on that. So that's when I started, he introduced me to Noah, and that's where that side of the connection came in.
That's awesome. And so Noah, how did you meet Zach Miles?
Yeah, well, actually through some entrepreneurial connections in Las Vegas, through some startup communities. It was actually somebody I had been working with and sort of an advisory capacity and a potential investment capacity had indicated that there's this opportunity that I should explore, and thought that it would be a really good fit for the type of grant that's available and the research that the grant is intended to stimulate, to be really consistent with our mission and the work that we're doing, and also the phase that Mojave Rail had been at that point. So we got connected and did the application. Brendan has a lot of experience with these type of grants and everything like that. So and I don't. So having Brendan as a partner was just indispensable and totally invaluable for me to help me negotiate this. And we were really, really just delighted to be able to have the opportunity to receive this grant and undertake this research in partnership with UNLV. And I'm glad to have Brendan as a part of this.
And one of the things I'd like to add to that was what made it interesting is, we interact with a lot of companies and government agencies, and very few of them come in saying, I'd really like to work with a group of, undergrad senior design students. That's usually the last thing sponsors, most of them don't even know about that. So the fact that, Noah had experience in going through a senior design process himself, a few years ago, and knew the potential that is a, if you get a good group of students, you can get a lot done. And the scope of what I think he needed from us seemed to fit that, that level of a good senior design capstone year-long project.
Oh, that's great. And I'm looking forward to talk a little bit about it, because this is a neat area. So Noah, you're originally from the East Coast. We were talking about that, and yeah, we're both sort of surviving our winter here in Vegas, because I'm from the East Coast as well. So 50 degrees was a full day, but you're a local company here in Las Vegas.
Yep.
Oh, no, that's great.
Yeah, we are. And that's a big part of our brand identity. Having this to be organically developed and refined, to kind of have the finished product, the go-to-market product realized here in Las Vegas with UNLV is a big part of who we are, a big part of our brand, and a big part of our culture as a company. But yeah, I'm an East Coaster. My background is mostly in law. I mean, I'm a patent attorney and engineer by education, but entrepreneur, lifelong entrepreneur. I've done a couple of startups, and this project, is probably the most exciting one that I've been able to work on. And working on it with the students is just incomparable opportunity.
Well, I think we're sort of batting around the idea, and I don't think anyone other than us knows yet. So you're a road cyclist historically, and Brandon, I don't know if are you a cyclist as well?
I have a bike, but it's pretty dusty. So
that counts. We're count you in the cycling group.
right.
But what I really like about the project the two of you are working on is it's very applied. I love cycling and do a lot of traveling, and there is a gap in how to transport your bike. So can you talk a little bit about the idea that you folks have and what you're working on for transporting bikes?
Sure. Yeah, and you're absolutely right, and you framed it well, John. I've encountered, as someone who has been a lifelong skier, road biker, water sports enthusiast, surfing, stand-up paddleboarding, is when I'm trying to transport these recreational pieces of equipment on my roof, on a roof rack, and I'm a fairly tall guy. It's still a little bit of a challenge to get it up on the roof.
Mm-hmm.
You got to lift it up over your head. If you got a stand-up paddleboard that's pretty heavy, or something like a mountain bike with expedition gear, panniers, and things on it, it's gonna be heavy. It's hard to get it up there. If you have an SUV, let's say a 4Runner or an Escalade or something tall like that, I mean, it's a real challenge.
Mm-hmm.
And I found myself, and I saw everyone else doing this too, in parking lots, at trailheads, and all over the place, standing, opening their door, standing on the door sill, or sticking their head out their roof rack, trying to make sure that their gear was secured on their roof effectively and adequately, so that they could go out on the highway and not have it fly off and cause an accident or destroy their $6,000 bike, or whatever the case may be. And it just seemed like it was such a challenge. It seemed like we're devoting so much time, taking away from our opportunity to engage in the recreational activities that we love, because we're messing around with this, trying to get it on the roof or take it down when we get home. And I thought, I look at other people who are of smaller stature or mobility impaired due to injuries or whatever, have, rotator cuff injuries or whatever the case may be. It makes it impossible. It's prohibitive. They can't get their equipment to where they want to do their recreational activity anymore. And so they end up giving it up because they just can't get their bike on the roof. And I thought that's ridiculous. That shouldn't be. There's got to be a better solution. So I invented a better roof rack that slides down laterally and presents the loading area to the user at a very comfortable height and level. And the user can just load up the gear on the roof rack and then slide the gear laterally up onto the roof. It just glides up and down. It's not clunky or anything like that. And we have a couple patents in process on that technology right now. And so that was really the genesis of this project, you know, and having the opportunity to work with the UNLV students to refine that. The mechanical engineering department, you know, as Brendan had mentioned, my background from undergrad was mechanical engineering as well. And I was part of a senior design competition, capstone competition, similar to what we have at UNLV. And it was such a tremendous experience. My team ended up winning that competition my senior year. And it was one of the highlights of my college experience. And I thought it could be so enriching. It can really expose the students to how business works if an industry partner comes alongside and takes the students through the design process in terms of exposing the students to all the aspects and of the design considerations and the criteria to think about, you know, marketability and think about all the different aspects of intellectual property and capturing that, and you know, practical considerations from a business perspective to gain that exposure would be really, really interesting to be able to be a part of that. So I facilitate that as an industry partner, kind of leading a student group and team to really refine the design all the way up to a fully marketable, commercially viable solution that we're going to launch at the conclusion of the project.
Oh, I love it. And I mean, you know, this is all about solving a problem. And you know, we're the Sports Research Innovation Initiative. You're in the innovation category. Obviously, cycling is a sport. So it's so neat to see this innovation. And Brendan, we were talking before we started about just roof racks in general and you know, just the cumbersome of roof racks in this.
Yeah, I've never even dealt with a roof rack. I've had a bike rack on the back of my vehicle, and I know between my wife and myself, she would have given up cycling if I wasn't dealing with even just the rack on the bike of the vehicle. So the and you know, that is so, you know, so I can imagine, you know, I never even, you know, I looked at a roof rack and said, I'm not as tall as Noah. You know, it's like, I'd have a hard time putting stuff on the roof of the vehicle. So I never even considered that for myself.
Yeah, I got to tell you, this was what makes this really exciting. I remember when this project came across for the college grant, John, Nancy, and I and Zach looked at each other and said, this is exactly what we need to support, because we get many questions. What is sports-related research and innovation? This is a prime example of how broad the definition is. It's not just about, you know, sports science or sports psychology or just different things that people think about when they think of sport, right? It's the innovation behind it. How do you keep people moving? And you hit the nail right on the head, Noah. It was, some people stop moving because it becomes cumbersome for them physically to even move their equipment, to use their equipment. But there's nothing wrong with their legs for cycling or anything else that they're doing. So to be able to think about the end user, I think is really important and exciting. So we really appreciate having you part of our college grant program for sports research and innovation.
All right, so now I've got to ask: is this roof rack adaptable to a vintage trailer? The side story is I'm restoring a vintage trailer, and I still need to somehow put my bike attached to this. But I'm kidding. But you know, obviously with a lot of the racing that I do, I see people traveling all the time with different styles of racks. You know, hitch racks, roof racks. And
it brings up a good point, John. You know, for like to say the focus of senior design, you know, even though it's a year-long project, you still need to focus it fairly narrowly to be able to get something done that's decent quality. And so we're focusing on a rack. We actually have there's a suburban vehicle in the, you know, part of the College of Engineering. You know, it's used for different projects. It's in the parking lot. So we've used that as sort of a guide, took pictures, you know, looked at, you know, filmed students trying to mount a bike on the roof of that and what some of the problems were and troubles with it. And the goal is to get a prototype that would fit a vehicle like that and demonstrate that it works. And once that's demonstrated, I think this could be modified or designed for almost any kind of vehicle.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's great. Now, something that people talk about, in terms of having their bikes on racks is theft. So sometimes the thief will steal the whole rack or the bike on it. Have you folks also talked about safety of the bikes while on the rack?
Mhm. Yeah, John, that's a great question. I mean, all of the mounting of the bike to the rack is very, very similar to what folks will be accustomed to seeing in conventional roof rack solutions in terms of the attachment and the lockability of both the bike to the rack and the rails to the vehicle. The difference really is, it's still two rails that are parallel to each other that are, perpendicular to the direction of movement on the car, transverse rails mounted on the roof. The difference here is that the whole mounting area of the rack, rather than being 6 feet off the ground, can slide down and really just be presented right in front of you as you stand next to the vehicle. So it's going to be, it slides down at an angle. And so it looks just like if you were standing above your vehicle, just looking down at your roof, like a conventional rack if you were using, an OEM rack or a Thule or a Yakima rack. The same, you would be faced with basically the same load area with the same very similar types of interfaces between your equipment and rails. That part is very conventional. In fact, the novelty and the innovation lies in the ability for that whole mounting area that we're all accustomed to and familiar with to be presented to the user at a very friendly, convenient, and accessible height, so that folks, like Jay was saying, I mean, the real essence of the value of this idea is the ability to get more people out and doing the activities that they love and not having to give those up. That's really the whole point of this is so folks who would not otherwise be able to go by themselves without the help of someone else can say, hey, you know what, I'm going to throw my board on the roof and go stand up paddleboarding today, even though, I wasn't able to do that before. And I'm not going to have to get a special different vehicle. I can continue to use my tall SUV, but I'm just going to slide my rack down, lift up my board, and then slide the whole assembly up onto the roof, drive to my location, drive to the beach, bring it down, unload it, and go stand up paddleboarding. It just opens the door and eliminates an obstacle, just so we can get more people involved in the activities that they love. I mean, there's so much to do, even here in Southern Nevada, getting out. You see roof racks on all these vehicles, and as SUVs and kind of crossover wagons become more popular, the load area is higher and higher up off the ground. And this is just a very ripe business opportunity that coincides with a need for people who are recreational minded to be able to get out there and do what they want and what they love. So all that part of mounting and everything like that is going to be very familiar to folks.
That's great. And you're right. I mean, here in the Southern Nevada area, Southwest region in general, we have some wonderful outdoor opportunities. So this is really neat. I'm gonna just walk back just a little bit on the partnership that you folks are forming. I call this an academic industry partnership, and maybe give folks a sense of the types of discussions the two of you had to sort of zero in on a project, because sometimes you start with these real broad ideas, but as researchers, we like to do really straightforward, very controlled things. So maybe just, and I know we're running a little bit longer here than we wanted, but maybe just give a little sense of those conversations that the two of you had to zero in on a project.
I'd have to say, I think, when I first met with Noah, had initial conversations, and he sent me a draft of what he was working on, and the initial patent work, it was already pretty well defined for a project that that was scoped out, I thought, well, for a university project. So I think our conversations, our first conversation was dealing with how are we going to find the best group of students or a good group of students? And so we immediately started talking about how we were going to recruit and build a team to work on this. I think that, if I remember right, I think that was part of our early discussions. And of course, sometimes the contracting process doesn't always go as smoothly as you'd like. So we're doing this before we have a contract, and just assuming that it was pretty obvious that it was going to go through, but some things you had to do before everything was officially started.
There's a lot of work when a lot of things, I's need to be dotted, T's need to be crossed when you do these academic industry partners. And so that's wonderful. And again, you're sort of leading the way on how to do this. So this is great.
Yeah, John, I mean, one of the most exciting things about this partnership, honestly, is it's more than just the development and refinement of the product, which is going to be tremendous, but from the student's perspective, really giving that industry practical exposure and experience to seniors who are about to graduate and go out into the job market, to help them better define what it is that they want to do, to get some exposure to real business considerations, to give them a sense of experience that's going to really lend to their maturity in terms of when they're marketable as candidates for engineering positions after graduation. They'll have this better perspective because they'll have been involved in the design process, and kind of I'm helping them to navigate all the considerations that we as a new startup business experience, and all the challenges that we're facing. I share that with them. I share those considerations with them as we go, so that they can take those into account as a part of the design process, right? Because there's practical considerations that we're facing as a new business in terms of attracting funding and marketing, and a whole host of issues. And I'm demonstrating to them in a real world actual example how those play into the ongoing engineering research and development process, so that they're going to be familiar with that. They're going to have some exposure to that. That's tremendously exciting to be able to do that.
No, that's wonderful. And we use the term workforce development here at UNLV a lot, and this is a great way to do exactly that. What you're explaining it's so spot on, and that's really the value from an academic perspective of these types of partnerships. Is it does expose students to the real world and where they can go in career. So
sorry, to tag on what John was saying too, is from a workforce development aspect, it's really exciting because our community is changing and has changed overnight. We have a industry disruptor in terms of sport. And it's a great thing for our community because we're transitioning not only from just entertainment and sports betting, or we're going also to sports. So it adds another element of how we can have a positive impact on that, through these unprecedented times, for how our students can take advantage of this economic recovery that we're going to see here very soon. At least that's what our hope is, right? And I think by introducing them to different ways that they can be engaged in this new economy that we're growing right here in their backyard, I think it's exciting. And you guys are definitely leading the way on that. And I think as we move forward, we'll have through sports research and innovation, we'll have opportunities for our faculty and our industry partners to tell that story to a broader audience. And the first step in that is we're going to have our summit on March 5th for our internal faculty to just talk about, ways to collaborate. I'm pretty sure Brenda's going to be involved, and he could talk about the importance with other like-minded people of how to collaborate and why it's important not only for the institution, but also for our industry partners and for our students. And you guys are a prime example that I think a lot of faculty members, students, and industry partners can look up to.
Well, this has been such a great conversation. We're going long, but we got two of you. So
should we mention? I know it's gone long, but the other thing we've had to deal with is the COVID pandemic and shutdowns, and talking about new skills. the fact that we're doing the meeting this way, and we have weekly, sometimes bi-weekly meetings with students, that this form of communication, I think, will actually extend beyond the pandemic. Like some of these types of meetings will, I think I'll be doing this for the rest of my career, where I never really did this type of meeting before, but we do miss, it's been difficult to not be able to meet as much face to face. And yeah, we have working protocols where students can work in the shop, and we have some support there, but it's still, it's been a challenge that way of physically getting things done, just because of meeting all the the protocols in place for keeping distant and minimum numbers of people in rooms.
Well, I love it because you're an innovator, and part of what I think you're doing is taking what we're experiencing with this COVID-19 and what can we carry forward that will help these types of partnerships in the future. And clearly being able to meet electronically helps everyone, especially when we're doing industry partnerships, because then someone doesn't have to travel to meet face to face. And that's always a hassle, parking on campus or, going somewhere else. That's always a bit of a pain. So I think you're right that there's some value in learning how to communicate this way. And let me close with just saying that it's so important that we're trying to build these relationships over a long period of time. These are not academic industry partnerships that we just want to do for one grant even. We really do hope that these partnerships are formed and carried forward over a long period of time, and so everyone benefits. So, well, this has been great to talk with both of you.
All right. Yeah, it was good to see you again.
I can't wait to see the rack, and I am going to see if I can modify it to be on my trailer. So,
all right.
This is awesome.
Thank you, John, so much for setting this up, and Jay, great to see you.
Always good to see you guys. Thank you.
All right. Bye, everybody.
All right. Hold on one second.
All right.
I have to close down. Thanks, everyone, for listening.